about to, okay. Excellent, just about to say that. We're just about to start recording. We just want to make sure that those who aren't on it, this webinar have access to the Intel afterwards. It's also really useful if you pick up something useful today that you want to refer back to that maybe you didn't quite take a note of, then the recording will be available to you. So obviously that means if you do want to ask a question verbally, if you want to come off of mute at any stage, then your voice will be recorded. But please don't worry, you can also pop questions into the chat function today and we'll make sure that we answer those too. So don't worry, you don't need to be recorded and hear your voice in the future if you don't want to, because I know some people don't like that. And thanks to those of you as well who have popped your institution into your Zoom name. It's great to see a range of institutions represented, but also this range of sports. Some of you have put the sports in there too. Feel free to say hello in the chat function and the sport that you're from so that we know the range of sports we're covering today and can use some relevant examples. I will be getting started shortly. Leah, anything else you want to add?
No, that's okay. There may be points where I'm just muted just because I am in an office environment. So if there's any background noise, I don't want that to be picked up on the recording, but welcome and hopefully you'll find today useful.
Perfect. Right, we'll get started. So our main topics today are basically our competitions and how you enter them and engage with them as Triple S, as part of Triple S's network, as Scottish Student Sport members via your institutions. So our key staff contact section, just the first bullet point there, very much wanting to make you aware that there are lots of clubs in Scotland, lots of student clubs in Scotland, lots of member institutions in Scotland. We liaise with your fixture admins as the first point of call for all of our events. If you have a question about a competition, then our first question to you is, have you asked your fixture admin? Because most of the time they will be able to answer it for you. So I would very much make sure that you're aware who your fixture administrator is within your sports union. We can help with that. Of course, we can let you know who that is at the end of this. But very much want to make you aware that fixture admins are your first port of call. Behind the scenes, Leah and I and Chris, who's also on our call, our head of competitions, will be making sure that you have access to competition. I do things such as events, so championships, anything ranging from our kind of recreational competitions all the way through to multi-sport. So I'll be behind the scenes and making sure that that happens for you. Leah, do you want to introduce what you do?
In addition to what Jess, and we'll go through what exactly our competition offer is, I look after our league and knockout competitions. So anything that kind of happens on a more regular basis than a one-off or kind of multiple event style is what I look after.
Perfect. And Chris, our head of competitions, helps keeps us on the straight and narrow in terms of rules and regulations and anything disciplinary as well. We are very much behind the scenes working up at Triple S. We almost don't need to be in full sight. We want you to be able to liaise with our sports chairs, the development groups and the fixture admins as your first port of call. So a key point there. Which leads us into the communication channels, how you can contact us. If you are a captain, and a few of you may be, then you may be aware of our tool called Basecamp, and that is a group setup that allows you to contact us via Basecamp, an online tool essentially, equally via your sports chairs as well. So if you are not a captain on the call today or watching this in the future, feel free to raise something with your captain and they can chuck it into Basecamp for us and ask us the question. So that's one communication channel. Another one is social media. We do have social media as Scottish Student Sports, but equally each of our sports does have at least either a Facebook group or an Instagram account, maybe even Twitter as well. If you do feel that you want to ask a question relating to one of our events, that is also a way for you to contact us. And finally, email addresses for our sports chairs. Sports chairs are your representatives to us around all things in your sport. So if you want to make sure you know who that is and how to contact them, go to our website, which is scottishstudentsport.com, and click on sports, find your sport, and you'll find your sports chair listed and the email address there. So basically, there are many ways for your questions to be answered and lots of people that you can get in touch with. Leah and I will be working away behind the scenes, answering the questions via those channels for you moving forward. Moving on then as to what today's session will look like. Obviously, it's very much a tutorial on how to use the new SSS Playways system, which many of you will probably think very familiar because it's very similar to Bucks Play, which is the system that Bucks has. Before that, we'll just explain what we're going to be using the system for. So over to you, Leah.
So as I mentioned before, well, and you can probably tell from the combination of what Jess and I explained as our kind of primary roles at SSS, we have three main elements of our competition program: league and knockouts, again, that I look after, events, which we currently have, I believe, over 100 planned for the season, so quite a number across 35 sports. Now, and we also have our national squad program, which is our representative team selection, so to speak. We won't go into too much detail about national squads today, again, because that program is still under review for 21-22, so we don't want to give any sort of false information in this webinar as at the moment. And then once that program has a better shape for what it's going to look like for this season and in the future, we'll provide some more information at that time. Okay. So from a league and knockout point of view, we currently have league competitions in 6 different sports, and in addition to 4 knockout tournaments, with the potential of another one in semester 2. We currently have introduced this season, actually, the men's and women's basketball trophy, which, if you guys are basketball captain at the moment, is still available for entry, closing tomorrow, the 8th of October. We have the Queen's Park Shield, which is a men's football knockout tournament, and the renamed She Can, She Will Cup for women's football. And we're looking and working with our fencing chair to add a fencing team's knockout competition for early in 2022. That's it.
All of our events can be found on our website, the scottishstudentsport.com site that I mentioned earlier, and that covers a range of individual teams or the combination of all of those. So we've got semester 1 competitions up on the website at the moment, so you can see what's coming up. Bear with us, there has been a lot to do over the summer months, so the calendar, not the calculator, will be updated as we go along and make sure that more events are added. So keep an eye on it, and that's where you'll see what's happening. So all of that, leagues, knockouts, events, will be added to the new SSS Playways entry system. And we've really brought this in to make sure that you guys have the capacity to access our services and entry system via an app. It's something we've never had before at SSS, but obviously we're all on our phones, we're all using apps nowadays. It just makes sense to move with the times. We want to make sure that that also empowers you to have more connection with SSS events, understand what's involved in them, to make sure that you are empowered to enter yourself and follow your progress as you go through. But the benefit of it, as I mentioned earlier, it's quite similar to the Bucks Play system, and we've done that on purpose to streamline with Bucks and other partners, just for simplicity at your end as the student, so you don't need to enter via multiple different systems as you go through your student sport career. So into the tutorial, pens and paper at the ready, or words on Word document. How to sign up? This is the question. So first of all, we're recommending you download this app that we are recommending. It looks like that. So please look for that logo. Please use the email address that you have used for your Bucks Play account if you already have one. That will likely be factoring in a 3rd or 4th year student who was competing prior to the pandemic and involved in Bucks Play activity. If you're a new student, 1st or 2nd year, there's a chance you haven't yet set up a Bucks Play account, so feel free to use whichever email address you wish. We just recommend you use the same one. The benefit of Playways is you can access Scottish Student Sport on one side and also BUCS on the other. So rather than requiring to download the BUCS Play app separately, you can actually access both, as long as you use the same email address. You can then click search Playways to find Scottish Student Sport. And it is important that you actually use the words Scottish Student Sport rather than SSS that we are referred to commonly, just because otherwise it doesn't come up on the system. So that's what it'll look like. You'll click through, click join, and you'll be in. We ask that you click joining yourself when you see this bottom left graphic. Joining a dependent is very much for a parent who is entering someone. That's very much for the rest of the Playways users, for a governing body such as Families in Scotland, for example. We fully expect you to be taking control of your entries rather than your parents necessarily. So please do click join yourself.
Just for reference, that this is how you access via a desktop or a computer. We'll go in and see the slight difference between how you join a community on the app. But just for reference, this is what it would look like if you're on the website for Playways, which we'll share in our resources afterwards as well.
Absolutely, good clarity there. So once you have clicked join, you'll be asked to enter a few details. Your institution, which is a fancy word for whichever university or college you're part of. There'll be a drop down, so please do select from there. Alumni or any guests who are allowed to enter specific SSS events that are allowing guests. Guest is a function, a drop down option of institution, and that's at the very bottom of the list. So just for reference there. But all of you as current students so far will be found on that list. Your level of study and your year of graduation, very straightforward. It helps us understand who's entering our competitions. And your date of birth, just for insurance purposes, we host events for 16-year-olds and over to capture any college students that may factor into that age bracket, and we just need to check that's the case. You'll also be asked for your gender and whether this links to the same sex you're registered at birth. Essentially, we want to make sure we are as open and inclusive as possible. As you'll see from that drop down, we have the options of man, women, non-binary, prefer not to say, and the term I prefer to use is not currently listed. We have set up our system that you are able to register yourself in any way that you wish. Our competitions will, unless they are registered as mixed competitions, still have a man or a women's element to it. So we do ask that if you are someone who is non-binary or prefer not to say, or just likes to choose, that you select the gender that you would like to participate in for the duration of that competition. So if you are setting yourself up for a league event, then you would compete as that gender all the way through the league event. More than happy for you to change genders for another competition down the line, for example, a championships in the same sport, but as long as it's for the same duration. So as inclusive as possible within our sports. Disabilities there, we do ask that you give us as much information as you can on that. Again, we want to make sure our events are as inclusive as possible for you and accessible. So if we notice that you have a disability upon registration and when we're looking at the entries, we will be in touch. We want to make sure that we can do whatever you need to make sure you're as comfortable as possible and can access everything in the best way. Please do get in touch with us as well. If you want to understand if a competition is accessible for you, if we do already have something in place, please do ask the question. There is no harm in asking the question. There is more harm in not, in my opinion. I'd rather have an inbox full of disability inclusion questions than none. And our emergency contact details and your competitor contact number there, they are really important for us, basically in case something happens to you at one of our competitions. We want to make sure we can let the right people know at the right time. So please do make sure you fill those in. And as you'll see there, we have some policies that we're just going to ask you to consent to, essentially just your standard GDPR, that term we're all familiar with now, and our privacy notice as to what we'll be doing with your data. So please make sure you have a quick read through that and click to consent. You'll click continue there. When you then find that on your screen, there is also, as you can see, a not a participant button. Now that is for people who are potentially coaches or a parent who is interested in just joining the Triple S community to see what's going on. As most of you will be students who are looking to compete, we ask that you click continue, please, just to keep our records on track. And then you will have a little notice that says that you've joined, which is excellent. Success. So now you're in Scottish Student Sports Community. That's the overall bracket for Scottish Student Sports. So as you'll sign up to BUCS, you'll have signed up to Triple S. Now, I understand if you're interested in athletics, you're going to only really want to look at athletics events. So, funnily enough, athletics is the example that I've used for today's webinar, and I will show you how you can join the athletics community. So, once you're in, you'll have a range of sports on offer. You can either scroll or you can use that search button to find your sport. Athletics handily is at the beginning of the alphabet, so we can find that nice and easy. So if you click on that again, please select that you're joining yourself rather than joining a dependent, and click on join. You can view it again. If you clicked not a participant earlier, then you will be able to view a community. It means that you won't necessarily be able to join any events, but if you're interested in what's going on, then you can click view. So there's no harm in doing that. But again, if you want to enter, please click on. And then you'll have joined. So this is what it looks like on the app. Leah, do you want to take over on this bit?
So it's not listed or seen at the moment, but essentially once you download the app, it will ask you to either create an account, which will go through the very same questions that Jess did an overview. It will just look slightly different from the desktop to the app. And then once you've logged on and created that profile, you'll end up at this page here. Again, this is where all of our communities would be listed, and then you'll be able to select. Jess, are you able to go to the next slide, please? Yep. So you'll be able to select which sport you'd like to join, and I've chose climbing as an example for mine. And then once you select that sport, if you do join, there's a pop-up again of view and join. You press the join button there on the right-hand side. And then again, you'll be asked if you want to join as yourself or dependent. It's a standard question across basically anything that you want to do in Playways. As Jess mentioned, it's just a standard platform question that we can't really get rid of at the moment. If you press for yourself, then you'll come up with the next page and you'll have it confirmed and then go within a sport community itself.
Perfect, thanks Leah. So how to join an event. I started with the athletics example, so I think I will continue with the athletics example. So if you have entered the Scottish Student Athletics community, you will be greeted by the top screen there, where you can see home, payments, etc. Anything that is currently open and available to enter will be greeted by an image and a logo and a title, so you can't really go wrong. Once you click on that, you'll then see this below photo, and what I ask is that you definitely read the description, which you'll see there. It has a scroll bar at the right hand side because it's not quite big enough to be able to fit all of the information in that we want to tell you. That will give you information on who is eligible. For example, do you have to have only one team in this competition, or is it unlimited? Are guests and alumni entering as well, or is it just for students? The deadline and the cost for competition, etc. So please do make sure that you read the description rather than just cracking on and entering. Obviously, you'll have the date and the map of the location. One thing to note, if it's an online event, then it will just show a random location in Scotland because that's all we can do on the system to identify it as online at the moment. So if it seems like you're in the middle of the sea, it's okay. We're not asking you to go into the middle of the sea. Once you have clicked to enter a competition, you'll be greeted by the different tickets. Obviously, in athletics, you've got a range of disciplines. I've captured a few there. You can see here we've got the options of guest or student entries, and they are set at slightly different cost rates. So do make sure that you read the right one and don't get charged too much. When you click enter, you'll be asked for a few different questions. This is basically to make sure that you're the person that we're asking to be part of this. If you are registered as a man or prefer not to say, etc. on the system, and you are trying to enter the men's event, the system just wants to check that you are eligible. Equally, want to double check we've got all the information that we need from you in terms of your emergency contact details. So the little ticks that you see at the side there, as if that's already been given to us. The little red cross is if that's something that you're yet to complete to make sure that you can continue. So for example, the SSS event terms and conditions box, I've got a little cross next to me there. I just need to give that a little tick. And the same with photography and filming permission that will be happening in the event. I just need to give that a tick. Equally, you'll be asked again for your institution. We want to be on the safe side. You can search or you can scroll, same as before. Again, similar to your terms and conditions, there can be a gender and specific event related questions. So in athletics, we want to make sure what your personal best is. It's the same with shooting for your actual shooting average at the moment. If it is, what else do we have? A swimming time, again, your best swimming time, just to help us with seeding. So these will be additional questions that we ask based on the event. Now, I entered as myself, who identifies as a woman, and therefore I have women in my gender box. You can see a little red cross there. Now, that's just the system wanting us to go into the drop down, so I can click into women, click into the drop down and reselect women there just to be on the safe side. Again, it asked me to fill in a time, so I reckoned I can do 1500 meters in 4 minutes. I think that's reasonable. I'm not a particularly fast runner. Once you've done that, you then click the check eligibility button. That's basically just to make sure that all the fields that have just got a little tick next to them are correct and filled in properly. Once you've got green ticks next to everything, you then click apply, funnily enough, and then it takes you through. So just to prove the point, once I'd ticked the boxes for terms and conditions and photography, then I got a green tick and I was able to press on through. And then you'll be greeted by this wonderful payment screen. Now, I'll talk a bit more in depth about the payment setups in a moment, because I do appreciate we've got a few different pathways to follow. I do want to pause there because we have just covered quite a lot. We've covered things like eligibility, gender breakdown, we've covered how to enter competitions. I can't see the chat function, Leah, but have we had any questions so far?
None so far that I can see.
Okay, perfect. I'll give everyone a few seconds if you have had a question that's come to mind just now to fire it in, and I'm happy to answer before I move on. I think we're all good.
I think we're good, Jess.
I think we're good. Excellent. Well, if at any stage anything comes to mind, guys, please do chuck it in and I will stop and answer. So again, to follow on, the app does look very similar, just smaller when you look to enter an event. So you'll see everything in a scroll down view rather than necessarily as broad. You'll be able to click to enter your competition and everything goes through there. So exactly the same process, just looks a bit different. So payments. We have the opportunity at SSS to invoice sports unions for entries into our competitions. This can be easier for clubs that don't have access to a card and can only do BACS transfers. This can be easier for people who are requesting assistance from the sports union in order to cover some of their entry costs. We also have the opportunity to pay by card. Obviously, that's quite a straightforward one. But obviously the defer payment one is a little bit more complicated. So I'll touch on that in just a second. If you do want to pay by card, it is a classic pay online. I don't think anyone needs an explanation of how that goes. You will immediately receive a confirmation booking email, which looks something like that, just to let you know that you have entered. Something to bear in mind is if we have an event that's open that has different disciplines competing on different days. So for example, fencing, if you are choosing to fence in foil on a Saturday and sabre on Sunday, you will receive a booking confirmation that says that everything is happening on the Saturday, just to give you the exact spanning of the overall competition. Do not panic. As long as you are aware of the timetable and that you are definitely competing on the Sunday as well, then we're all good. It's just the booking confirmation can only give you the basic details. You know, we are working with computers and robots after all. But the defer payment, that's a slightly different kettle of fish. So this is what you select if you want to defer payment to your sports union, i.e. request an invoice. That weird terminology there of team category, your team, you're part of your bigger institution, that is your team, University of Edinburgh team. So Playways' language is, do you want to request an invoice to your institution? That's exactly what that means. So what we ask is that you ask your sports union first, please, because otherwise your sports union will be inundated with all of these requests to cover your entry fees, and they will need to work out whether they've agreed to that or not. It's very much easier if you say, hi, I'm looking to enter the athletics event, and I was wondering if we could pay by invoice because that's a bit easier, and then they say yes or no. So please do double check with them first. When you clicked that button and said, you know, with your sports union's permission that you want to defer payment and pay by invoice, you will be listed as applied. I'll show you what that looks like in a second. You're not listed as paid because technically you haven't paid. It's the invoice that needs to be paid first. You will only be able to tell if you have fully entered and your institution has paid your invoice by going through this process, which is checking your entry status. So if, again, we're on the athletics example, click on events, and you will be able to see a drop down of all of the different disciplines, and you'll be able to find your name under the discipline and under your institution. So for example, to bring that back a bit, if you've entered the 60 meters and you're a man, then you'll go to the men's 60 meters student event. And if you are from University of Glasgow, you'll click University of Glasgow and you'll pull that down and be able to see whether you've paid or unpaid. So you can see here, we've got Matthew Cliff, who has paid his £8 for his entry, and we've got Ethan has done the same. Two of them, Aidan and Sadiq, are currently unpaid. That is because they have clicked defer, and that invoice request is now sitting with their sports union waiting to be approved. This will look like this on your account. So when you click on athletics, you will be sat as applied. And that's another way for you to be able to say, oh, okay, I haven't been clicked as paid yet. I'll need to contact the sports union. When the sports union has accepted your request to pay by invoice, then you will be listed as entered and paid. So that is a bit of peace of mind for you. Now, remember, you need to contact your sports union first to ask if they are going to cover this for you. There is a chance they may say no, in which case they will fire it back to you and you should get a notification saying that you actually need to pay for this by card yourself. So again, open communication with your sports union is very much of the essence. Don't leave it to the last minute before the deadline to check if they're paying for your invoice or not. Make sure that you find out first.
We do recommend that you do this process on a desktop and not the app, just for security reasons. So please do that in advance of the deadline.
Absolutely. But it's still available on the app, but it might be a bit easier on the browser. Perfect. So that is how you enter competition and the payment options there. So there are two options. Again, one straightforward, which is just simply pay by card, and one a little bit more complicated, but just requiring some communication with your sports union. And just to kind of finish up there, once you're actually in the sports community on Playways, you're not going to need to go through all of those beginning steps again. You're in for as long as you are a student involved in sports and as long as you have the app, essentially. If you're involved in the Scottish Student Athletics community, for example, when we then next launch the next competition, for example, the Indoor Championships, which we're looking to host in February, then you will receive a notification on your homepage in this bar that you see on the left. That is essentially letting you know that entries are open and that you can get cracking. So it's a really useful app. You don't need to wait for the heads up from your captains or your sports unions. The app will tell you yourself. So it's not just a one-time thing, oh, I've entered it once and then I can get rid of the app again. It actually will be beneficial for the rest of your student sport career as well. If you want to be part of more than one community, you are more than welcome to. I'm part of at least 35, and you will get notifications of all the other events that are open too. So very much if you're interested in just coming along and having a bit of fun at some volleyball, you're more than welcome to. You're not limited to just one sport. And I think that's it from me in terms of the events. What we're going to do now is I'm going to stop sharing the screen, open the floor for any questions that may have arisen there. Again, whether they're in the chat function or if you want to ask them out loud. And then Leah will talk you through the leagues and the knockout processes that we'll be using on the system. So give us just a second as we transition from here. Any questions? I think we're all good so far. Hopefully we've made it all clear. Leah, I think you may be on mute, so you may want to unmute there. And I'll check the chat function for you as you go along.
18 months of Zoom and still haven't figured that out yet. If we're all right, we'll move into leagues, which is a slightly different process. So for the majority of Jess's kind of overview, it was via desktop, and we're going to show you a little bit of the functionality of the app for the leagues. But again, you can access information on both the events and leagues on both systems, both desktop and the app on your phone. So once you've gone through the steps that Jess demonstrated and have joined the your specific sports community that you're interested in, you'll see, you'll come upon these kind of screens here. So I've selected cricket for my kind of demonstration, just to provide another overview of another sport that we use. And it's one of the leagues or one of the sports that could potentially have a league. So similar to what Jess showed earlier, this is just when you get to the main sports community, you'll be able to see all leagues, all teams, and all fixtures all in one place. You would just have to, this is the same page just because of how small my screen is on my phone. When I was doing screenshots for this, it's just easier to show on two different photos, but essentially you just need to scroll down on the initial sports community to see all of these features. So if you're interested in joining a sports team, what you do is you select your institution from the available teams here. And then what I've selected for our demonstration is I actually picked a couple of hundreds at the moment teams, and then we're going to use Birmingham Phoenix as an example. So you would click this button here and you end up with this kind of homepage. You would basically just select join team, and again ask the question whether or not it's for yourself or somebody else. You click yourself and then you'd get a success. You also get a notification on your homepage, the newsfeed that Jess mentioned earlier, on the front page of your app, that you've successfully applied to join a team. So once you're on the team kind of hub, this is what it looks like here. So you'll be able to see your captains' names. One things I should mention is that there are 3 different user groups on Playways. One is the administrators, which is Jess and I and any sort of staff member at Triple S. we're kind of responsible for creating the leagues and the events. The second level would be your sports unions. They have slightly different permissions. Essentially, what they can do is set venues. They also can designate a specific member of the community as a captain. So some of the features that I'm going to talk about at the moment can only be done by a captain. So once you join a community and you've been given those permissions by your sports union, or would like to get those permissions from your sports union, you'll need to contact them. It's something that we at Triple S won't be doing. And in order to do anything further at this point, you'll need to have those permissions. So if you're looking for a specific fixture, this isn't something that only captains can see. Any member who joins, has applied to join a team, would be able to see this homepage. So once you've clicked on the fixtures, there'll be a full list. We've only created 2 for this demonstration, but you'll see a full season of upcoming fixtures in this sort of page here. You'll be able to, there's a filter section that most of you have seen. You'll be able to see past fixtures, upcoming fixtures, different competition fixtures will all be listed on this page here. So once you've clicked onto the specific fixture you're looking for, it will list all of the information here. A captain would be able to set the start time of a fixture, but again, as I mentioned, a venue can only be set by a fixture administrator at the moment. So this is specifically for pre-league fixtures, is how to select a team on the system. Again, as I mentioned, this only can be done by captains. And if you're unsure if you've actually been approved by your sports unit to become a captain of a certain team, you will receive an email specifically notifying you that you now have permissions to make team selection and enter results in the future. So what you can do right now is, in this demonstration, we have selected some specific players that are already in the squad. So if you're not sure if you've actually selected anybody, there would be a full list of players available to you. But what you want to do is see if any new members have asked to join your team. So essentially what you would do here is you would see a list of players who've requested to join a specific squad. And then you would basically check this circle here and add them to the squad, and then go back to the first tab, and you'll be able to see that the name's been added there. So how do you submit a score? Again, this can only be done by captains after a match has been played. So again, it's back to that page that I showed you in terms of where all the fixture details are, what the competition is, what the date is. We want to hit scorecard, and essentially you'll come to this page here. You'll just select the winner from the drop-down menu, and then here for cricket, you would add how many overs it was played, how many runs were scored, how many wickets. So this area here is sports specific. So say it's a badminton fixture, that would be number of sets and number of matches. For tennis would be rubbers and number of sets as well. So this area can be different depending on the sport. But again, this drop down select winner will be the same across anything. And then you can see the final result here. And if you do make a mistake and realize later down the line that you've incorrectly entered a score, you can go back in after the fact and edit it. It's not locked at this point. So as long as you have a paper copy or the paperwork at the match itself has been completed, you're more than welcome to go back and edit it online for that version. Does anybody have any questions for leagues? It's quite a whistle-stop tour at that point. Just doing so well. Yes, all team members do have to join the Triple S network and the relevant sport community in order to be selected for a team. I also should mention, Eve, just because you are in swimming, say you have a club member who actually is registered for another institution who trains with you and like to compete with you in our leagues, they are eligible to be selected for your team. We do ask that if they join your club and compete in our leagues for that institution, that they aren't able to then switch to another institution within that league competition, no matter what institution they're from. But we do request that if there is somebody from a different institution who wants to compete under your banner, that you just contact us, your sports unit, and they'll let us know, just for awareness, for insurance purposes. Again, it's a pretty user-friendly, oh, sorry. For Edmund, because you're in table tennis, correct? For the leagues team sheets, you will need to complete that on Bucks Play. Anytime you would use our Playways would be for the National Triple S Championship, and all those player details would be on our Playways community versus Bucks Play. But in terms of the national trophy information, that would be on Bucks Play. Hope that was clear enough. Swimming leagues are likely going to be starting early November. We're still confirming the actual fixture dates, but you will have some time likely finishing around April. So you will have some flexibility in terms of fixture dates. So in terms of if your team, Rachel, may I ask what sport you're with? So currently we don't actually have any snow sports competitions within the Triple S program. But if you're looking in terms of in the future, if we are looking to add to a league, we would have clubs enter the league system. So that team would already be on Playways. And then from there, once entries have been set, you'll be, there is a small button, say Join Team, and be able to link with that. Yes, they will be required to select from the pool of approved players for each individual league match. And we ask that this is done beforehand. Again, it's just for us to keep track of who's actually competing on every given fixture, because in previous seasons we haven't had that detail, especially now with track and trace. We do request that that's completed for each individual fixture. And one thing to be mindful of is that pool of members does not disappear over the course of the season. So if somebody's interested in joining and they can't compete until later on, then their information will stay in that squad list and can be moved for each individual match throughout the year. Jess, are you able to clarify for rifle? I'm assuming playing for a different institution is similar?
Yes, absolutely. We have applying for another institution policy, which you can find online. I'll see if I can find the link for you shortly. Essentially, what we want is the sports unions to talk to each other to say that they're both happy. So, for example, if Heriot Watt student wants to compete for Edinburgh in rifle, then we would ask the Edinburgh and Heriot Watt sports unions have that conversation to make sure that they're both okay with that. So that crosses all of our Triple S sports. It's very different for BUCS events. This is a Triple S only policy at the moment. There are very much different rules there. But yes, for Triple S rifle, you are able to do that. Just ensure that that conversation happens. I'll see if I can find the link.
For judo, Alex, you don't need to provide that level of detail on a weekly basis. For judo, like you mentioned, there's only an individual competition, so you'd only need to provide that information once upon entry. So I believe that judo would have a smaller number. The reason why we do it for our league competitions is there's quite a number of athletes that compete and vary over the course of the competition more so than an individual championships. So you'll get asked a specific event entry question where you'll list maybe 2 or 3 or 4 athletes versus a full team, which could get up to about 20 people. Sorry, I just got a dry throat there. Any final thoughts or queries?
Andrew, I'm assuming you're Andrew on our Scottish Student Curling Development Group, so very much working with us on the league. We're very much wanting to work on that. Now that we've received the rules and regulations, Lee and I will be able to work on how we'll set that up on the system, and we will be able to get that launched as soon as possible. So we'll just need to close the entries for that maybe a bit later than we would prefer. But yes, in short, we're definitely keen to make sure that we get the entries open soon.
Eve, there's currently isn't a limit on the system for the number of people that can join a swimming team. I do need to refer again, and apologies, I don't know off the top of my head, is there is a swimming and aquatics rules and regulation guide, which may dictate the number of people that can compete every single in an individual fixture. But what I can do is I can post those guidelines onto our Basecamp group, and that will be able to provide some clarification before you add them into the squad or select them for an individual fixture on a weekly basis. Just mindful that people might be typing. Yes, Basecamp is our kind of communication portal for our sports chairs. Each individual sport has a captain's group as well on there. And if you're looking for some more information, we can put you in touch. Mainly, we do have a separate kind of project management platform, if that's kind of the right term for it, because currently Playways doesn't have any capability to store documentation. So we keep that separately off our competition platform. Plus it predates Playways.
Eve, can you just type in the chat if you are a captain yourself? Because if you're not actually on Basecamp, we can get you onto Basecamp if you are a captain. Perfect. Okay. We can look into the email address that we've got on the system and get in touch with you. If you're happy putting your club email address into the chat just now, we can fire you an email and make sure that you're all set up on there. And helpfully, Chris is actually our lead for aquatics on the call, so he'll be able to get you set up as a captain on Basecamp. So if you've got a club email address that you're happy sharing on the chat, then please do pop it in there. You can send it to us privately as well in a Zoom private message if you wish.
If for those who are captains who are currently on this webinar, I do recommend that you do get onboarded onto Basecamp as soon as possible, because that's when we'll chat about captains meetings, any sort of changes that you should be aware of throughout the season. And it's also an opportunity for you to communicate with other captains on an ongoing basis, because there are instant messaging possibilities as well.
Perfect. Thank you, Eve. We'll be in touch on that front.
I'm just making a note of that, just the email address.
As am I. All right, shall we say two more minutes for questions? Let everyone get away for a 3 o'clock caffeine boost.
I think that might be the last one.
I think we're good. If you wouldn't mind giving us a little bit of feedback via the reactions button, where you get the opportunity to give us a range such as these. Could you give us a thumbs up if you feel pretty comfortable that you now know what the SSS Playway system is? Sorry, I should stop now. A thumbs up if you know what it is and what it's used for, if you feel a bit more comfy with it. If there's anything you're a little bit still unsure about, do you want to give us a little shocked face and we can maybe touch base with you offline around that?
Are you just mindful of, are you able to see those with no cameras?
Yeah, they're still coming up. That's all good. Perfect. That's great to see everyone. Really glad that was of use overall. Edmund's beaming, so he's clearly had a great time on this webinar, which is excellent. So hopefully everyone watching this afterwards on the recording will too. Thank you all so much for your questions. It's really useful to know what we can help you with, what the questions are currently in the student sector, so that we can hopefully be as clear as possible in our communications out to you. Yeah, please get downloading that app, get signing up, and we're looking forward to seeing you take part in our activities this year. Thank you very much.